This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we will showcase the contents of Blue Color Support Pack number 1 of our Jumpstart Commander Cube. If you haven't been following along or are new to the channel, look in the description of this video for links to the primer video for this series, its playlist, as well as a list of the cards featured in this video. As previously showcased during the primer video for this series, these are the types of cards you can expect to see in every color support pack. Now, with the prologue coming to an end, let's start spotlighting some blue support cards, beginning with our basic lands. We've got 3 regular basic islands, and then we have 3 regular snow-covered basic islands. Yes, I understand that we don't have the complete set of the full art. We just ran out of them, so we had to throw a non-full art basic land in. And if you don't think that bothers me, you are way off the mark, because that is a very troubling thing that we don't have all lands that are exactly the same full art variety. All right, so we got our 6 basic lands. Next up, if you've been following along with this series, you know that is going to be our Thriving land, and that is Thriving Isle. This baby comes into play tapped, and when it does, we choose a color. We can tap this for 1 blue mana or 1 mana of the chosen color. 6 basics, 1 thriving land. Next up is our utility land of the non-basic variety, and for this pack, it is Hall of Storm Giants. If we control 2 or more other lands, Hall of Storm Giants enters the battlefield tapped. So hopefully this will be in our opening hand, so we can put this bad boy into play on turn 1 or 2, and not have to worry about it being tapped, so we don't lose any tempo or ability to cast any spells during the early parts of the game. We can tap for 1 blue mana, of course, because this is a blue color support pack. We can also pay 5 generic mana and a blue, and until end of turn, Hall of Storm Giants becomes a 7/7 blue giant creature with Ward 3. And it's still a land. Ward 3 means that if any of our opponents decides to target this with a spell or an ability, that spell or ability will be countered unless that player pays 3 additional generic mana. So as a mid to late game mana sink, jamming 6 mana into this land to turn it into a 7/7 creature with Ward 3, well, there's a lot worse ways we can use that mana, and Hall of Storm Giants can definitely do some damage in combat. We are just not doing this in the neatest ways possible. All right, that's better. Okay, that looks... Are we straight up here with the camera? Zoink. All right. And so those are our lands, and next up is our MDFC, which is our modal double face cards, spell on the front, land on the back. And for this support pack, it's Jwari Disruption. An instant on the front for 1 and 1 blue mana. We counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 generic mana. Yeah, strap yourselves in, MTGBC. In these blue support packs, you know there's going to be counter magic littered throughout. And if we decide to play this for its land, of course we can flip it over and put Jwari Ruins into play, which is a land that comes into play tapped that we can tap for 1 blue mana. Since this MDFC does give us the option of putting it into play as a land, it's going to stay up on top there with the lands. All right, our next card in order is our Planeswalker for the pack, and that is Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. This seemingly innocuous but extraordinarily powerful version of Jace from Shadows over Innistrad enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters for 3 and 2 blue mana. We can add a loyalty counter onto this Jace to scry 1 and draw a card. That is extraordinarily beneficial. We can -2 loyalty off this Jace to return target creature to its owner's hand, and if we can have Jace on our side of the battlefield long enough in order to activate its big bang ability of removing 8 loyalty counters, then we get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, that spell is countered. And note, at the creation of this video, in Magic the Gathering, there is no way to interact with emblems. So Jace's Planeswalker emblem, if we get it on our side of the battlefield, it's there for the entirety of the game. or, unless we end up losing for some strange reason. All right, so that's our Planeswalker for the pack, a very powerful addition. We have card advantage, we have hand disruption, and if we get the big bang, we have ultimate counter magic abilities. All right, our next card is our creature modifier. That's either going to be an aura or an equipment. And in blue color support pack 1, that is an equipment called Robe of the Archmagi. We have an equipment with a mana value of 2 and a blue mana. Its equip cost is 4 generic mana, or we can equip it to a shaman, warlock, or wizard for 1 generic mana. And whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw that many cards. So hopefully in one of our packs, either in this support pack or in the other color support packs or our commander pack, we'll have a shaman, warlock, or wizard so that we can pay just 1 generic mana to equip Robe of the Archmagi onto that creature as opposed to paying 4 generic mana. That is a savings of 75% mana, and that's something that we can take to the bank every day of the week and twice during Friday Night Magic. All right, our next card is our Color Strength spell, and that is Fact or Fiction. Instant speed, 3 and 1 blue mana. We reveal the top 5 cards of our library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. We put 1 pile into our hand and the other pile into our graveyard. This can work wonders, particularly if there's any politicking at the EDH table. If we're looking for answers for one opponent who is just rolling off the table with everything that they're doing, we can just have an opponent say, hey, I'll put all 5 cards in 1 pile so that you can help to interact to slow down opponent number 2 so that the rest of us can try to get back in the game. Or, more often than not, if we're casting Fact or Fiction, we're just going to put one opponent in the difficult place of separating those 5 cards into what they believe are going to be 2 equally, shall we say, playable piles, although they're not going to know what's in our hand and what we need. So either way, Fact or Fiction is going to help us immensely whenever we cast it. All right, now we're going to shift to our removal spells. Now, I should point out that blue, we're not in a color with a huge amount of removal spells when we're talking about blue. So when we talk about spot removal, mass removal for blue, we're going to make sure that removal is also considered to be disruption. So anything that we can do to disrupt our opponents, we're going to count that as being removal as well. And our first spot removal spell actually is legitimately a spot removal spell, and that is Pongify. 1 blue mana at instant speed, we destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated, and its controller creates a 3/3 green ape creature token. It seems very unlikely that the 3/3 green creature token that the opponent is going to get is going to be anywhere near as threatening as the creature we decide to destroy. And how is it that blue can just pay 1 blue mana at instant speed to destroy any target creature and just leave behind a 3/3? That is really a blue thing? 1 blue mana. All right, our next spot removal or disruption spell, it is the classic counter spell. 2 blue mana at instant speed, we counter target spell. I did warn you when we showcased Jwari Disruption, these blue support packs, they're going to be chock filled with counter magic, but shouldn't be to the point where it's overwhelming. All right, shifting away from spot removal to mass removal and disruption, we have Curse of the Swine. We have X and 2 blue at sorcery speed. We exile X target creatures, and for each creature card exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token. Note that these are not destroy X creatures, they are straight exile. So any creatures with indestructible, they're going to be targetable and exilable with Curse of the Swine. I'm not so sure targetable and exilable are words, but when you're rolling with MTG Burgeoning, we're rewriting that dictionary on a daily basis. All right, our second and final mass disruption spell. It's another sorcery, and it is Consuming Tide. 2 and 2 blue mana. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control, and then we return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. then we draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in hand than you. So to note right away, this is a symmetrical effect. So unlike Curse of the Swine, Consuming Tide is going to have us return non-land permanents to our hand as well. And as long as we have our math as well as tight as it can possibly be, we can figure out if casting Consuming Tide can benefit us by the purposes of drawing additional peripheral cards. Because as long as one opponent has more cards in their hand than we do, then we're going to be able to draw cards equal to that difference, and we should come out ahead, particularly because all of the non-land permanents that are being shifted into everyone's hands, well, those have already been seen, and our opponents and ourselves, we've already cast them. But we're also going to hopefully get a nice batch of fresh cards put into our hand, because we want to make sure that at least one of our opponents has more cards in their hand than we do in ours. Let me note, just for the purposes of clarity here, Consuming Tide is going to have us draw a card for each opponent that has more cards in our hand than we do. It's not the number of cards. So if opponent number 2 has 6 cards in their hands and we have 3, we're not drawing 3 cards. We're just drawing 1 card. So we just want to make sure that each one of our opponents, they're going to end up having more cards in their hand than we do when we cast Consuming Tide, so that we can draw X cards where X is the number of those opponents. It's not so much drawing the difference of the cards. I have to correct myself there. I made an error. It is the number of opponents that have more cards in their hand. All right. Now, shifting away from our disruption and our removal, we're going to go to our hate card, our defensive card. And in this blue color support pack, it is Hullbreaker Horror, a 7/8 Kraken Horror for 5 and 2 blue mana with Flash. Flash meaning that we can cast this spell at any time we can cast an instant, and this spell cannot be countered. Whenever we cast a spell, we choose up to one of the following 2 modes. Either we return target spell we don't control to its owner's hand, or we return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand instead. So note that if we're going to choose the first mode, we're most likely going to need to have a spell that's an instant or a spell that has Flash, because otherwise we're not going to be able to do that outside of any kind of mass Flash enablement spells or abilities. We're going to make sure we need some instants in our hands so that we can return that spell to their opponent's hand. More often than not, because Hullbreaker Horror is usually a card you want to make sure you build around, it being included in a support pack as a hate or defense card, this is more likely going to be that whenever we cast a spell, we're going to bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Note that the non-land permanent that is returned to the owner's hand, that does not have to be an opponent's non-land permanent. It can be one of ours, which could be beneficial if we're trying to reap the benefits of leave the battlefield or enter the battlefield triggers. Not to mention that a 7/8 body that can get flashed down in the middle of combat and become a surprise blocker, or can get flashed down during the end step of our last opponent in turn order, and then swing in for 7/8 combat. Yeah, on the next turn, that could be pretty beneficial as well. All right, next up we have our resource advancement card. So that's going to be, creatures, cards in our hand, mana rampage. And of course, if we're in blue, we're going to talk about drawing cards. And if we're drawing cards, Nadir Kraken is a nice card to go along with it. This Kraken for 2, 3, and 1 and 2 blue mana value says whenever we draw a card, we can pay 1 generic mana. And if we do, we put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. Of course, with blue, we're going to be drawing cards. I mean, look, we already have Jace right there. Jace is going to allow us to draw a card with its first loyalty ability. Robe of the Archmagi is going to do the same. And any other cards that we may end up having, if we cast a Consuming Tide, if we leave Nadir Kraken on our side of the battlefield and draw those cards, we can pay that generic mana and create those 1/1 tentacle tokens. All right, our next card is our Combat Enhancement card. And that is going to come in the form of Gigantoplasm. So here we have a shapeshifter for 3 and a blue mana, and we may have Gigantoplasm enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except we can pay X generic mana, and this creature has base power and toughness XX. That is very, very nice. Note that it does not say until the end of does not say until the end of turn. So it stays that way until we choose to jam more X or a different amount of X into it, changing the power and toughness. Very, very powerful ability. You're going to notice that as we go through the various color support packs in this Jumpstart Commander Cube, that the combat enhancement slot is going to be a slot that allows us to have a card that comes into play and then become a copy of another card on the battlefield. We're rolling with blue packs here, and combat is not really blue's forte. However, having cards come into play to become copies of other things, well, that's right up blue's alley, and that's an alley that we're going to live in, especially here with Gigantoplasm. All right, our last card of this video. It is our iconic creature type, and we're in blue, so our blue iconic creature type, it is Sphinx. And in this color support pack, we have Sphinx of Migozi. We have a 6/6 flyer for 3 and 3 blue mana. We can pay 2 and a blue mana to draw a card, and then put a +1/+1 counter on Sphinx of Migozi. So here we have another way in which to draw those peripheral cards, which will definitely help to create additional Nadir-created 1/1 blue tentacles off of Nadir Kraken. All right, there you have it, MTG BC. We have showcased the contents of Blue Color Support Pack number 1. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, or let me reframe that to make it more accurate. I look forward to read what you have to say in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.